It's really important that you make sure you have a good wire harness before you put in a new transmission. A wire harness of this age especially could have chafing that's allowing different things to short out. You could have broken plug retainers that are causing plugs to loosen up and work their ways out, and then you have intermittent things happening. A lot of erratic shifting and things like that can be traced back to a loose plug. So when you're checking these things out, you always want to look at the exposed portions of the wire. So here, this is the DTR connector. This one's real dirty. But here you can see there's always like an inch of exposed wiring. You want to check that for chafing, make sure there's nothing shorting, no burn marks in here. Make sure this yellow, if that's not in there, I don't want to pull this one out, but then the pins that are inside are locked by these little plastic tabs. If this retainer is not in there, those pins have room to move around and eventually break those little plastic tabs, and then they come out and then you have a loose wire. So you always want to make sure it's complete with these retainers. Some of them are red. I'll show you the solenoid one. That's a red one. This one just happens to be yellow. And make sure that this clip here, this little thumb thing, is on there. That's what snaps it to the DTR. If that's not on there, this will eventually work its way off, or at least work its way to a disconnect. So you always want to check and make sure that's in good shape. Now the speed sensors, these are just two wire plugs. These things are usually broken off. If yours are broken off, you can probably rig something up to hold it on there with zip ties or something else, or you can just get a new plastic plug. There's a company called Auveco, A-U-V-E-C-O. They're the OEM for a huge amount of plastic Ford stuff. These plugs, a lot of the Christmas trees and those little push pin kind of plastic deals like you see in door panels and things like that. They make all that stuff. They make this. I'll put the part number in the description, and you can order them. I mean, they're probably just a few bucks, but you can get yourself a new plug. And it's just the plug. It's not a pigtail. It's just this plastic plug. So you'll have to pull this red pin retainer out, and you'll figure out how to disconnect those, get those pins out and get it into the new plug. The front and the rear plug are the exact same, just like the front and the rear speed sensor on non-PTO units. PTO units obviously have the same plug, but they have a different speed sensor. Anyway, this happens to be a two-wheel drive harness on a four-wheel drive transmission. It's a diesel harness. This is the diesel fuel pump connector here that goes down to the pump on the rail. And we know it's a 99 to 01 because it has these two 16-pin connectors. 02 and later have a different connection system, and they even actually wired up the relays into the harness, so you can't interchange those harnesses. You got to stick with your year range, and that year range is 99 to 01 and 02 to 03 for the 7.3 trucks. So the other thing about the harness is, how does it snap up on here? Well, there's the really long plastic pointer guy that pops into here. This small one snaps into the front of the shift bracket. So let me spin it around and we'll take a look at the solenoid pack. That's the most troubling one. All right, so here's the solenoid plug. Again, it's real dirty. I haven't cleaned this. This was on a truck I took apart recently. But basically, again, you have another inch here of exposed wiring. You want to check that out, make sure there's nothing chafed, nothing's arcing over. Make sure there's no burn marks here. And it's got to have this red plastic retainer inside here, like the other yellow one. This is what holds the pins in. There's little plastic tabs in there that snap the pins in place, but this keeps them from moving. Those keep them, those plastic tabs are for pulling the pins out, but this red retainer is what keeps the pins all in place. If that's missing, you could be pushing your pin out when you push this on, and or at least have a very weak connection, and this could cause you a lot of erratic shifting if any of these pins are disconnected. Now you'll notice here, the tab on this one is broken. Here's what a good tab looks like. This tab here is what I'm talking about, that I'm pushing with my thumb. So when you push this connector on the solenoid pack, it's not going to snap on. It's just on there. Now what's going to happen over time is this is going to slowly wobble around. It's going to eventually pop off, and you're going to have to get a new one. So make sure you have that tab on. If you don't have that tab on, don't blow it off, man, because you're going to have trouble. And also when you put on any wire harness, make sure you clean out these connectors. The ones I'm giving you are going to be real clean. So just hit these with some electrical contact cleaner, and that'll help you out with a much better connection. And like I said, if you don't have this snap here, this little thumb clip, you're gonna have to either find a new connector from a donor harness or buy yourself a whole new harness. The connectors are all the same, so if you can find a gas harness for cheap, you could do that and just swap the connector. I know diesel parts tend to be a lot more expensive than gas parts, so that's totally fine to do. They're all 100% the same plugs, if you want to think of it that way. So now we're going to go inside the truck. I'm going to show you one more important electrical wiring check. Another piece of the electrical puzzle is the OD button. The OD button wires are these 3 really skinny wires that come down the tube, and then they make a sharp turn down the steering column here. And where they make that sharp turn is where they get chafed and possibly even broken, which is right here. This one's been repaired. You can see where it comes out of the tube. Here, let me get my pick instead of using my fat finger, but they come out of the tube right here, and then they come out into this harness, this wire plug that snaps into the right here. So if you do replace your column shifter, that's what you're going to have to do, is just disconnect the wiring here. But you can repair that. They're really skinny wires. It's a pain. If all 3 are broken, you might want to just replace the whole thing. If they're chafed, you could just put on some liquid electrical tape, and then maybe wrap the whole thing in electrical tape. As you can see here, is we put some plastic wire loom around the affected area to protect it, to keep it from happening again. And this was done years ago, and there hasn't been any issues since. When this happens, this could, well, it disables the OD button, so you can't shift out of overdrive. It also will not flash, so it will not show you that there's transmission codes, if there's transmission codes. Some other trucks, O2 trucks and later, it'll take out the fuse, a 10 amp fuse that also controls your instrument cluster, so it'll blow that out and it'll put you into limp mode. So all kinds of bad things can happen if these wires short out. So I would check that. If your truck has anywhere, I would say anything over 100,000 miles, you're going to want to check these wires, because they're probably already chafed. And that way you can fix them, you can secure them kind of like this before they actually break, and then you don't have to deal with soldering these really thin wires, because they are really thin and there's not a lot of room to work without taking the whole thing out. So check those wires, whether you're having trouble or not. I would check them, because if you're not having trouble today, you're eventually going to have a problem with them.